We're here today to talk to Dr. Femi about the things that cause stroke. Now, there are many myths, and even myself, of what I think causes stroke. But today, we're going to get real deep insight from Dr. Femi. Hi, Dr. Femi.
Hello.
Okay, so I'm going to take it from what I think causes stroke. And I'd love you to enlighten me and enlighten the audience so we get a thorough understanding of this disease, right? It's another word, disease?
So the first thing is what stroke is. So basically, stroke is a shortage of blood supply to the brain. So it's either you've got a leak, and so there's a shortage of blood supply to a part of the brain, or you've got a clot or some other thing through the bloodstream blocking blood supply to the brain. So that part of the brain that is deprived of blood obviously would manifest symptoms based on what part of the body that side of the brain controls. So essentially that's what stroke is. Okay. So the different causes are things that can cause either one of these basic etiologies or causes of stroke. So yes, blood pressure is one of the main causes, as is diabetes. So those are like the two leading causes of stroke. Now, normal blood pressure acceptable in age groups above 40 is between 120 systolic and 139.
Okay, that's the top numbers.
Yeah, so systolic just means, let me explain it this way. When the heart pumps, it pumps blood out. Mm-hmm. So obviously, because the heart is pumping the blood out, that is the higher blood pressure, and that is the systolic phase of the heart's beats. Okay. So it pumps blood out, and then that pressure is usually higher. So that's the systolic blood pressure. That's what's at the top. Okay. And then diastolic blood pressure is the blood pressure when the heart expands to take blood back in. Okay. So that is diastolic, and that's what's at the lower point. So you got the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure. Okay. So that's what gives you the 120/80 or 130/90. So that's basically, how we get those values. Okay. If your blood pressure at any time is consistently above 140/90, then you need to be checked. You need to see a doctor. Okay.
So in saying that, I kind of understand the high-low numbers now. So what causes, and I know it can be different, so we can't really generalize, but what causes high BP, high blood pressure, and low blood pressure?
As I said, there are different things that can lead to high blood pressure. But the simplest things, if you have a stressful condition, a stressful situation, a stressful environment, yes, your blood pressure can go up. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a difference between having a high blood pressure and actually being hypertensive. That's two different things. Yeah. So if you've got high blood pressure, there's something we call white coat hypertension, which is where people go into hospital and their blood pressure goes up just because
they're thinking about it. Environment has worked them up.
So we won't call those people hypertensive because the minute they're out of that environment, the blood pressure comes down. So essentially what it is, as I said and I explained earlier, it's all about how the heart beats and the resistance. So these are the things that actually cause blood pressure to either be high or low, whatever. So your heart pumps blood, mm-hmm. and the veins and the arteries are fine. There's no obstruction, there's no problem. Everything flows normally, your blood pressure will remain fine. Yeah. If your heart is pumping very fast or the heart muscles are very strong, like they've become thick and they're pumping very high, it can make your blood pressure go up. If there is resistance, like there's been problems with the blood vessels, for example, there's some plaques or some obstruction, the vessels are narrowed, that can make your blood pressure go up. Because what we're talking about is the pressure in the veins. So they're like pipes, and blood is flowing through. If you push down on a pipe and you're trying to force something through it, obviously the pressure that will go through will be higher. So that's essentially what it is.
Okay. So I know we're jumping between blood pressure and stroke, and the awareness is about to give awareness for both. And I totally understand that blood pressure is not the only causes of stroke, but just for today and for this footage, we might just focus more on it. So you mentioned about being stressed and having high BP. So if somebody is in a stressful situation and your blood pressure rises, what are the signs that we can see on the outside to determine that, okay, red flag, something's happening?
Okay. First of all, the first thing I'll just to correct the notion is that a lot of people have high blood pressure without any signs or any symptoms.
There you go.
Blood pressure is what some people call a silent killer. You don't even know, a lot of people don't even know their blood pressure is high, which is why we recommend checking your blood pressure regularly, at least once a week or once every 2 weeks, if you have like a blood pressure monitor, especially if you're above a certain age group, like above 45, it is important that you check your blood pressure regularly. Now, that much being said, sometimes you could get symptoms from a high blood pressure, and one of the commonest symptoms is a headache.
Yeah.
So if you've got persistent headache that just keeps going on and on, one of the signs might be that your blood pressure is high.
Okay.
There are other things that can cause a headache, but obviously blood pressure, especially if it's persistent, and it's not like you have a history of headaches, you don't normally have migraines or anything like that, and you suddenly notice that, okay, you've been in a stressful condition, and then you've had this headache for some time, just check your blood pressure. It might be that your blood pressure is raised.
Okay.
Now, that hasn't put you in the bracket of hypertension, but if your blood pressure is raised, you've got a headache, you need to get checked. So essentially, it's as simple as that.
Okay. I also hear that if it's in your family, i.e. perhaps your mum or your dad, or both, you potentially could also have BP without even having a stressful environment, stressful job. Is that true?
Yes, actually, family, or how do I put this? It can be hereditary, or it can be familial, in that if someone in your family, or if there's like a family history of hypertension, it is important that you check your blood pressure regularly, even if you are not exposed to those conditions that will make your blood pressure raised. But usually we get more concerned about hypertension after a certain age in those class of people, because one of the main causes actually of hypertension is family history. Sometimes you're not even exposed to anything.
Okay.
You don't have all these bad habits or whatever. Like, okay, let's put it this way. There's a family history. Let's say because of the family history, you've got a 20 or 30% chance of being hypertensive, but then you don't exercise, you eat anyhow, you are always stressed.
So you've already increased your
chances,
naturally,
basically.
yeah.
So yes, there is that factor when we're talking about hypertension. Is a very important thing that we need to also talk about. And there is a slogan that they call it FAST. Now, the acronym FAST means if you notice any changes in the face, like a facial droop, if the arms are weak, and if the speech goes funny, if there's slurred speech or slow speech, then it's time to call 999. So basically, that's the acronym. It's not always that way, though.
Okay.
Because as I explained at the beginning, what stroke is a shortage of blood supply to the brain. Now, the brain feeds different parts of the body, execute functions as much as sensation, coordination in terms of balance and mobility. Part that brain controls becomes affected. So sometimes it might just be something as simple as sudden confusion. Someone is sitting there, we're talking, and then suddenly they just become confused.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that I should also mention is that there is something we call a TIA, which is it is a stroke, but it's like a small stroke. So you can have small and you can have massive strokes. The small stroke is maybe just a tiny vessel that is blocked and then becomes, whatever blocked it, becomes cleared or whatever. And so that person has the symptoms for just a very short period. So you get weak on one side of your body, and then in less than 24 hours, the symptoms are back. He's normal again. Now, that's not to say that person hasn't had a stroke, but it's not as severe as because the main concern with a stroke is the debilitating things that come afterwards. And we want to limit that as much as possible. So if someone has had a massive stroke, for example, maybe it's had a bleed in the brain, the reason why it's important that we know about that is we want to quickly intervene and release that bleed and reduce the effect on the brain as quickly as possible.
So timing with a stroke, is
very important.
It is key.
Yes.
So that in saying that, and when you say that some symptoms are not always obvious, how does one manage not having obvious symptoms, but timing is key?
Again, remember, stroke is shortage of blood supply to the brain, which can be either a blood leak or a blockage. Okay. So any of those things can lead to a stroke. So if you've got a history in someone who has any of those things that can lead to this, problems, you want to immediately you notice a strange thing in them, you just want to call straight away. You just call 999 or basically.
Wow. Okay. One thing I'd like to ask, we've mentioned the word stress numerous times, and stress can cause a lot of things. So in this situation, to reduce stress or to reduce the chances of high blood pressure, which potentially could lead on to a stroke, what can we do to manage our stress?
To deal with stress, first things first is you need to find time to rest. It's very important. Yeah. It sounds like something that's a bit difficult, especially for someone who's a working class person in this country. But you need to find time to rest. You need to look after yourself. Then in certain situations where obviously rest is not it's not necessarily possible at the time, it comes down to knowing yourself again. You know the things that you do or the things you can do that kind of calms you.
Okay.
But essentially, it's all about rest. Just chill. The world will not end if you're not there.
Yeah.
So just take time to just rest, and you will know when you're stressed. You know when things are getting to you. Yeah. You're always edgy. Yeah. You start to feel like you can't. Even sometimes you can't sleep is a sign of stress. So and it's a vicious cycle, because if you're very stressed, you can't sleep. It goes back again, and it's all about knowing yourself and knowing when to take it easy and when to chill.
Okay. So Dr. Femi, you've spoken to us. You've educated us. What do you do to de-stress?
Oh, my getaway is always music. Okay. So yeah, I love listening to music. I love making music. I love performing music. So this is my own way. This is how I escape from the daily hustle and bustle. So yeah, for me it's just music.
As a take home, as a roundup, what would you advise?
So these are like basic things that you can do to mitigate against all these things. So yes, that would be my take home. Rest, exercise, eat healthy, and check yourself regularly.
It sounds very simple to do, and it should be simple to do, but simple but effective. Dr. Femi, thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Whoa, every day, hey, yeah. Every day's not a holiday. My life's like a subway. Oh, I know this love don't last. Look at me, tell me what you see. Do you believe this love is real? Oh, I know this love don't last.